Hello, Brett Wild here. Today we're going to do a bit of an experiment. We're going to fly an NDB Approach, or a non-directional beacon approach. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, it's probably the original radio navigation technique, and it dates from the late 1920s. And so they would string these things across the country and you would fly directly to them just by a needle on your instrument panel. And you'll see how that works in a minute. Today they are still used, but not quite as much. I read that they are using them on oil platforms for helicopters to find them. Also, they're used for instrument approaches to mark the outer marker. So today we're going to do something a little more adventurous. We're going to fly from this little airport in Florida, Kilo Sierra Uniform Alpha, and we're just going to fly about 20 miles up to Fort Pierce, which is Kilo Foxtrot Papa Romeo. And you'll notice it's got these little red dots here in a circle, and you've got this red box here. This indicates the presence of a non-directional beacon, and like I said, they tend to be rare. Now, this is an interesting airport in that it does have an NDB approach, thanks to my friend Steve Haynes at deskboundaviator.com. Be sure to check out his channel on YouTube. Anyway, if you'll note our plate here, we're going to be flying up from the south, and when we fly over the beacon, we will make a right turn and fly outbound on this 71 bearing using the needle of our ADF, which is the instrument you use to track a beacon. And we'll do a procedural turn, come back around, and then fly inbound and begin our descent. It's a non-precision approach, so what we'll do is we'll time our outbound leg and then use the approximate same timing as we make our descent to know when we need to be looking for the runway or when we need to execute a missed approach. So let's get the airplane started and the ADF tuned in. So first things first, let's turn on our master switch and then check our fuel. It's on. Mixture rich. Crack the throttle and make sure our beacon is on, and we make sure that things are clear, and we can even yell out the window if we want, clear. And now let's get this thing started. And alternator on, avionics on. Wouldn't hurt to turn on our nav lights. So next, let's make sure that our ADF is properly tuned. If we look back at our map, we can see that the frequency is 275, and that is what I have dialed in. So our ADF is set, and then next, here is our needle, and it is pointing now in the direction of our non-directional beacon up at Fort Pierce. So show you how that works. If I click that, you can see the needle goes straight east. And I set it back, and our needle is now active and pointing in the right direction. So let's get out to the runway and begin our flight up to Fort Pierce. Alright, here we are on the runway, and I just noticed something. My directional gyro is not correct, so I want to make sure that this is set properly. I don't know what happened, but this should be set at 34. 340. So that makes a big difference, and you can see our NDB is straight ahead. So we'll climb to 2,500 feet. One more thing, let's turn on our landing lights and our strobe, and we're set to go. And rotate. Don't let that nose come up too quickly. I want to build up some speed. Flaps up. Trim that airplane for some climb. Of course, the business at hand is keeping that needle straight ahead. And we don't need all that throttle. So marginal VFR, soupy out there. Not really a safe day for flying. I'm having a difficult time with the trim. It's not holding it for some reason. So I'm just holding that runway heading of 340 for right now. The needle looks like it's tipping a little bit. Very small changes. Yeah, that trim is giving me fits. So at 2,500 feet, we'll level off, and it's about a 10-minute flight, and I won't bore you with all of the details. And just bring you back when it gets exciting. So right now that needle is level, and we're coming up on 2,500 feet. No autopilot, just holding it. Hoping the trim will help me out. Alright, back in a few minutes. I brought you back a little early just to check one thing. I wanted to show you one thing. Because I'm battling the trim, it's just not holding. I just went to AP to hold the altitude for me. But you can see it's kind of porpoising along. So, not quite sure what's going on with that. This is the default 172. You'd think they would have this figured out by now. Anyway, our needle's off just a tad, so I'll turn that way. And I want to back off on my fuel mixture a little bit, so I'm going to watch this EGT gauge. So as I pull it back, it's going to go up, and when it peaks, I want to stop. So it'll start to come down. There, it's starting to come down. So I'll just push it in a little bit more and hold it. So we are trimmed, and join me again in a few minutes. Alrighty, you can see down here in our Garmin we're getting close to our airport and our non-directional beacon. So we are going to want to prepare to fly outbound, approximately 71 degrees. Put the needle behind us. So we'll see how that works. So what'll happen, just like it would in a VOR, you're going to see this needle jump back and forth as we get closer. And finally, we're just going to want to fly outbound. And you can see the needle beginning to swing. So I'm just going to use our heading bug right now to turn to 71. And come back on our speed a little bit. Notice our needle turning drastically. And not a precision instrument, but let's see if we can get close. The main thing is we've got to get this needle behind us. So we're slowly going to lose altitude, but because of the speed and the power setting. But we want to be at 2,000 feet, if you remember. And just waiting for that needle to... Alrighty, so needle behind us as we fly outbound. Kind of watching our speed, our altitude. We're heading about 71. So when we have flown a sufficient distance from the airport to be able to make a turn and then descend in time, we can begin that procedure turn 45 degrees to 116. I'm going to just continue to use my heading selector. See the needle swinging now. And we can begin an ever so slow descent. Alright, I think that's sufficient enough. So I'm going to use our heading selector here. Increase power a little bit, make up for the loss of lift in our turn. Once I get the airplane turning in the right direction, I'll just go ahead and set this to 296. So we're doing pretty well in the altitude and our speed. And once we get on that 296 heading, we're going to watch this needle. And when it's 45 degrees off 12 o'clock, we can begin our turn back. And that shouldn't be long. So right now we're at about 40. So this needle will come back a little bit and we can begin heading towards the airport and begin our descent. And while we're out here, I'm going to go ahead and increase our mixture, full mixture on landing. Alright, we're there. Let's begin turning towards the airport. I'm going to kill my autopilot. And it was 251 back towards the airport. So we'll just get that needle centered, begin a slow descent. This is just hand flying, folks. Trying to get a sweet spot here to keep that needle centered. I don't want to be chasing it all the way down. So we've got another 1,000 feet to go before we need to make a decision. Watching our speed, the altitude, and that ADF needle. Nothing to see yet. Let's put in a notch of flaps. Slow us down a little bit. Needle is still straight ahead. Descent seems pretty good. I'd love to see an airport in the next 300 feet. And I think I see a runway out there. I see some lights. You can heads off in the towards the west. Another notch of flaps. Slow us down. Now that we have the airport in sight, we can forget about our needle and just watch our speed here. and do kind of an oblique base leg here. Final notch of flaps. Boy, that nose really comes up, doesn't it? Trim is giving me fits. I just can't trim the nose down enough. But our VASI lights look good. Whoops, a little high. There we go. Get straightened out here. Full flaps, we can kind of drag it in. Put it on the numbers. Didn't think I'd float at that speed, but... Alright, we made it to the airport in rather poor VFR conditions using an NBD. So hopefully this was somewhat instructive, and if you have any remarks, please let me know below. Until next time.